Yo, it's your boy Oakley, and today, what do you yet another My Hero What If? Deku was the reincarnation of KRONOS. This would all start off where KRONOS and many other gods are about to die. And yes, they do die to the demon race in the war, as KRONOS would be reincarnated into Deku a billion years later. Deku would have, multiple different quirks, I guess you can say, even though they're not really quirks. As he would grow up, they would get they would go to the doctor and they would see that, he doesn't have a quirk, and that's what the doctor is trying to tell everybody, or Inko and Deku, but Deku is showing off his lightning ability, pretty much passing lightning between his two fingers on his right and left hand. As Deku is pretty much showing this in his time stop ability, which you can't really show, but Deku would basically be like, yeah, but I have this power, and it just confuses the doctor. So Inko and them leave, and eventually Deku would just tell Bakugo and the goons and other people in the school about how he has multiple quirks. And Bakugo was very mad because lightning is mad cool, and plus he can stop time. So Deku wouldn't get bullied, but he would be envied by a lot of people because we all know in that class or in that school, probably in general, they did not have good quirks, and yeah, they just didn't have good quirks. That's why Bakugo was even praised, because no one else had really good quirks. But since Deku had two quirks and he was seemingly better than Bakugo, because he also had this enhanced strength and speed, and he was super intelligent. So people, and Deku wasn't like Bakugo. He wasn't really thinking that he was the best at everything, because he wasn't hyped up like that. Deku, people hyped him up, but he didn't let it go to his head. So Deku would grow up being pretty regular, actually. Deku wouldn't be as nervous or as Deku is. So Deku would just be a more regular person. Because Deku have multiple quirks, so he's kind of famous around the area. Deku would have a lightning in to stop time. I mean, literally, he can stop time, bring down lightning from the clouds, and clap you. So Deku would be pretty cool to other people. Deku would grow up in 10 years and even find out other multiple powers that he would have and train his powers to his absolute limit. Deku, for some weird reason, is having flashbacks to stuff that seem like deja vu. Every time he learns about Greek mythology, he would seem to have a flashback or a dream or something related to it at some point in time. Deku would wonder why this would keep happening to him, but he would just play it off. As Deku is thinking about it, as he's about to start his 10 months of training, after the teacher pretty much exposed him for going to UA, he would pretty much be thinking about this, not really paying attention while he's walking through the tunnel. As he's paying attention to himself and himself only, he would get caught slipping by the sludge villain. The sludge villain would try to attack him, and it would even lunge on him and grab onto his body. Deku would use electrical discharge to basically shoot lightning from out his body, and Deku would instantly fry the sludge villain. The sludge villain is pretty much fried and it can't do much, so All Might would easily catch it. Deku, since Deku would have no past memories of no past memories of how KRONOS used to live, because him and KRONOS are two different people. Because just like what if Deku was the reincarnation of Sasuke, he didn't know anything about like actual Naruto world. He had to learn that stuff. He had to learn that stuff himself. But Madara was there for what if Deku was the reincarnation of Madara, which I will be continuing. What if so Deku, he would basically see All Might and he would be pretty excited because he is a big fan of All Might, even though he knows that he probably he's not gonna be number one. Because Deku knows he doesn't know about All Might's scar, but Deku knows that he's still a human, so he's still gonna get old. His quirk is still gonna be outused, and he's gonna get tired. He's gonna be old. So Deku, still being excited to see All Might, he would pretty much slip up and lose his words as All Might is about to jump off. Deku would jump alongside him, soaring through the air alongside him, and as he's talking to All Might, since All Might would have a couple actual minutes left because he didn't have to waste his time waiting for Deku to wake up. As Deku would see that, Deku would be talking to All Might, as All Might would sign his autograph on Deku's notebook, and All Might would dip real quick after asking him his name and quirk. Deku would explain how his quirk works and his name to All Might, as All Might would say, "This is good to know, I hope you go to UA." As, Deku would be looking at the paper of the signature, he would see it and he would be like, "Okay, that's so cool." And he would realize there's a phone number there. So eventually, while he's walking home, he would see that, or he would hear an explosion. He would fly straight to it and he would see, oh, it's Bakugo. Even though he doesn't really like Bakugo as a friend at all, he would just save him just to save him. So Deku would just, since Deku didn't really grab onto the sludge villain, the sludge villain had to escape itself because since All Might and Deku had a conversation, All Might had to move faster than Deku, or at least try to. So after Deku left the building that they were on, All Might had to move multiple buildings. That's why the sludge villain got out easier, and Bakugo kicked it, and it pretty much bodied Bakugo as his goons would leave him. Deku would have to save him now. Deku would just say, "Okay, so you want more." As Deku would just electrical discharge from out his hands, and he would fry it again. But this time, he would teleport it to a different dimension. With the sludge villain having nothing to do in that dimension, it not really being fit for it quirk to be used, so it would probably eventually die. As Deku would realize that, hey, that's kind of cool. As he's unknowingly getting praised because he's thinking about what he just did. Deku would eventually go home and train for his 10 months, or at least start it. He would call the number, and All Might and him would link up and go to Degama Beach, clean it up pretty easily in about 2 weeks because Deku is just that good. He would go there back and forth with All Might, and get better at using his powers, and even know that he would have something like darkness or like shadow manipulation. He can manipulate shadows, but yeah. He can make the shadow, like an actual shadow, hurt you, like his shadow hurt you, but you can't actually hurt the shadow. And Deku can make multiple of them, but they're not physical things. So Deku would basically have something like a stand. Like you can't see it, but you can see a shadow. But you're gonna be paying attention to the person you're fighting, not the shadow, unless you realize it. So Deku, after the 10 months of training, he would see that. Whoa, okay, I see. I I'm gonna go and do this pretty easily, as he would realize that it's only robot training. So he would go to the written exam and he would do it pretty easily. Him having enhanced intelligence just because Deku would just go to, well, the robot exam, as the robot exam will be explained to every person there. Deku would leave to the gate. Instead of falling, he didn't fall, so he wouldn't meet Uraraka that way. He would just have to save her later on in that robot match. Deku at least had 89 points, and he decided to chill out, as he would see the 0 pointer robot rock, well, knock over a building that was already crumbled to the ground, putting more debris on Uraraka, so Uraraka can't move at all. It's not just her leg, it's pretty much all the way up to her back. She's pretty much helpless, as the robot is pretty much about to kill her, as multiple people is running from her. All Deku can think is like, the fuck? As he would just fly straight over there. As Deku would use his, well, darkness manipulation to move, to basically use the 0 pointer's shadow to hurt itself, or not really hurt itself, but to control it. So he can control the 0 pointer with the shadow, like Shikamaru's jutsu. It's kind of like that, but he's using their own shadow. So Deku would basically use the 0 pointer shadow to bring it back. He would use the 0 point shadow Uraraka to bring it back, and would never touch Uraraka. So it would be easier for Uraraka to live. So Deku would just teleport over there while his shadow was or the 0 pointer shadow was stuck in time, and basically get all the debris off of her and help her out. So Recovery Girl can heal her. Deku would dip out of there as the shadow would be let go, and the 0 pointer would fall to the ground. Deku would leave, and eventually he would get the note that he actually got in with over 100 points. Deku would be pretty excited that he did this. So as he would go to school, he would just fly there, bringing a lot of attention to himself. As he would see the class 1A, he would pretty much open the door, and as soon as Ida would come towards him, he would just teleport to a chair, which is his seat. Uraraka would eventually come into class and thank him for saving her. Once Aizawa would basically tell them all to shut up, they would all leave and go into the ball throw exams. Deku would be handed the ball, and since Deku would just throw it right through the moon, so Deku would basically get infinity on that. He would keep on going to get multiple number ones, just like since he can teleport on the speed race, and he could just stop time or just walk right through, watch everybody attempt to run, and his grip strength thing would just instantly melt down as soon as he touched it. So Deku is just too good. People like Bakugo knew he was strong, but not to the point where he can get infinities on test. So Bakugo would be pretty mad. Eventually, days later, after doing regular school stuff, well, All Might would appear. He would say he was walking through the door like a normal person, even though he truly wasn't. Deku would go and he would see All Might, he would be like, "What's up, All Might?" And they would eventually get to the hero versus villains, being paired up into the same teams versus same teams, except for Todoroki is in Bakugo team. So Uraraka would ask the plan. Deku would say the plan is for me to stop time and we just go up. And yeah, they'll just easily stop time. And since Deku, he would just mess with them. So he would basically, Baku was about to shoot an explosion, and he would just make Bakugo's arm turn right towards his face, so his explosion would hit itself, and he would make Ida run into a wall, as the time would basically unstop as both of that would happen, and they would hear hero team win. As Ida is thoroughly confused, so is Bakugo, until Bakugo screams teleportation. As multiple people would hear it, like Ida, Deku would just smirk, and he would just totally disappear. As Deku would get basically MVP because that's his quirk, bro. He pretty much captured the bomb without any harm doing to anybody, which would probably, it's just there's a lot of benefits to not actually hurting the bad guys. So Deku would basically go, and people would see, well, he's just that good. So after, Aizawa would tell him that they're going to be doing the USJ in a couple of days. Days later, they would all pile up to a bus and they would all go to the USJ. As Deku would see, okay. And he would go to the USJ, and once they would get there, as they would see that, well, it's pretty cool. They got different bios and it's pretty cool. Once Deku's looking around, Deku would just stop time for a little bit just to look around and see how to actually get out. So he would just adventure before anybody else could. Deku would unstop time, and seconds later, villains would appear. Deku would be teleported, and he would actually be pretty hurt because, well, how are you supposed to be teleported when one of your powers are teleported? Deku would just teleport, Froppy and Mineta and himself out of there, because even if he didn't have it, he would already know how to get through everything. So he would just teleport to different places and teleport everybody else out there. And the whole class would be pretty determined to fight the villains. They would take them out pretty easily, but with low-level people in the class like Mineta, Acid Girl, Invisible Girl, mostly all the girls. But they're just trash. Since when has they ever did anything? Look at the top 3 students in the sports festival. It's our main character, Todoroki, and Bakugo. Bruh, there's no girls that even got close. So eventually, they would easily, or for some of the students, with a lot of strain, beat villains and low-level villains. And yeah, the normal would eventually come out because they're losing allies. So, it would go for Deku the most, and it would just go for Gut Punch. Basically, Deku flew up just like the Nomu, but Deku stopped himself like after he pretty much pierced the glass of the USJ and fell out, he just started stop himself, like he suspended himself in the air, and he just went down, and he would realize that this thing is pretty strong. So he would go for a punch, and as he would punch it, he would punch a whole hole, like a big hole, like a hole that separates the top to the half. And Deku would be like, as it would regenerate, as Deku would think, what makes you heal in the first place? Deku, being extremely intelligent, he would think the brain. Without the brain, you can't heal. It's a vital organ. So he would go straight for the head. It's pretty much out and exposed, so it's going to be an easy target. Deku would fly up and do a supreme lotus on that fucking head, and that brain is all fucked up. So Deku would easily defeat the Nomu before All Might could even get there. Once All Might does get there, Shigaraki and Kirigiri would have to dip, leaving the rest of their low-level villains to fend for themselves, but for only a couple of seconds. As days later, for getting like a week and a half off for all the traumatizing of seeing all your friends, all the fodder, all the people who don't matter in Class 1A get bodied, even if they were invisible. But Deku would basically think, I actually did pretty good. Like, I don't think that anybody can beat me. So eventually they would get back from their break, and they would be explained the UA, or not the UA, but the UA Sports Festival. Days later, after like a week or two of training for it, they would all pile up on the bus and go to the stadium. As a class representative for Class 1A, Deku would basically get up and give his speech. He would be on the podium and he would say, at least try. He would walk off and people would be angry and happy at the same time. People don't even know what he really was implying. As the race would start, Deku would zoom by with the fastest speed that anybody ever seen, hyping a lot of people up. Deku would go to the cavalry battle, and since people would have a lot of grudges against Deku because he's too powerful, and yeah. So I'm just gonna say most of the people don't like him, especially in Class 1A because they got bodied pretty much a week ago. So Deku would just team up with Uraraka, and what Deku would do, stop time, and they would just literally go around the world. Like, we just go into different countries and states, and they would go back, and I'd be at the finish line with some ice cream, chilling. So Deku would basically be chilling while everybody else is actually running, and Deku would easily win. That's why I'm going to leave this one off, and I might make a video later, but it depends. Bye.